National Hispanic Hero Award is a testimonial, a recognition of contributions made by extraordinary individuals who have unselfishly given of themselves in a lifetime of dedicated service to the Hispanic community of the United States. It is with great pride and pleasure that we now introduce you to this year's recipient of the National Hispanic Hero Award. Eduardo Pena was born in Laredo, Texas in 1935, the oldest of 4 children.
My mother and father owned a small grocery store in Laredo, and we lived in the house behind it. From my mother, I learned patience and that we had a responsibility in life to make things better for everybody. My father taught me the value of family and friends, and both my father and mother were hard workers with big hearts.
Eduardo attended Martin High School, where he experienced unfairness when it came to electing class favorites.
One of the problems in the Laredo high schools was that even though 90% of the student body was Mexican American, we were seldom elected to class favorites.
As an act of protest, Eduardo organizes a plan with fellow students to bring attention to the problem.
During my senior year, the night before we were to have elections for class favorites, a few of us snuck into the classroom and wrote the names of the Mexican students that we wanted to have elected. The next morning, it made quite a ruckus, but it called attention to the problem, and it made a difference.
In his senior year, Eduardo is offered a full tuition scholarship to Laredo Junior College, and he is honored with it at graduation. Later, he discovers that the full value of the scholarship was only $25.
It wasn't about the money. It was that the scholarship helped me decide to go to college.
After a year at Laredo Junior College, Eduardo Pena enrolls at the University of Texas and puts himself through school by working as a cook, flipping burgers.
Not only did it help me pay for my education, but I got all the hamburgers that I could eat.
In 1958, Eduardo graduates from the University of Texas, and his proud family come to take him home. They stop along the way in a town called New Braunfels. They walk into the restaurant only to be told that they would not be served because they are Mexican.
Here was a day that I had reached the greatest pinnacle. That I had reached the highest pinnacle in my life by having graduated from college, and we were not even fit to be served in a greasy spoon restaurant in a little town that still maintains the reputation for being one of the hotspots of discrimination in the state.
A month after graduation, Eduardo Pena is drafted into the Army and is stationed in Augsburg, Germany. There, he weds his high school sweetheart and returns home in 1960.
The 60s was a time of great change, and somehow I began to become a part of it.
Eduardo Pena goes to work for the federal government as a wage and hour investigator. Shortly thereafter, he is assigned a territory that is in the heart of the Mexican community in Texas. Many Mexican-American employees were not even paid the minimum wage.
The job became a commitment because I was vindicating the rights of people who were not being paid properly because they were Mexican.
For years, Eduardo Pena battled companies to comply with the federal minimum wage law that at times seemed never-ending.
I was committed to helping all people, and particularly those who were not being paid the rightful wages because of discrimination. and particularly the undocumented, because they were the ones that were most deeply exploited by unscrupulous employers who violated the law.
In 1963, Eduardo Pena is promoted. He is sent to Washington, D.C. and works as a wage and hour analyst. There he writes regulations and develops training for investigators.
The work was very intensive because the law was changing so fast.
His prior job experience as a wage and hour investigator had taken him head-on with company attorneys and had given him the confidence to become an attorney himself. He enrolls in law school, taking classes at night. In 1967, he fulfills his dream of becoming a lawyer and graduates from Catholic University of Law in Washington, D.C. Eduardo Pena is twice honored by the federal government, receiving the Department of Labor's Award for Meritorious Achievement, and is promoted in 1969 to Director of Operations for the Office of Federal Contract Compliance. And it is there that Eduardo Pena helps to form a monumental concept that will level the playing field for minority companies.
I was one of 2 or 3 people that developed the concept of affirmative action as a means of prohibiting discrimination in employment by government contractors.
In 1970, Mr. Pena joins the Senate Committee on Labor and Public Welfare as counsel and drafts important legislation on equal employment opportunity, bilingual education, and the war on poverty. In 1971, Eduardo Pena's reputation as a fighter for equal opportunity earns him the job of Director of Compliance for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a position never held by a Hispanic, and becomes the highest Hispanic ranking official in the agency.
I wanted to extend the scope of the commission to more effectively protect the rights of Hispanics against discrimination.
Hispanics finally had someone at the highest position of equal employment, fighting for them on their behalf. While in Washington, he meets with Cesar Chavez and agrees to support his cause by organizing a march around the White House, something that Hispanics had never done before.
We agreed to hold a sympathy march around the White House to coincide with his arrival in Sacramento. Lyndon Johnson was president, and he wondered who these Mexicans were who were marching around his White House.
Ever since high school, Eduardo Pena had been involved with LULAC, the largest Hispanic civil rights organization in the country.
And in 1978, I was elected national president of the organization. It gave me a great deal of opportunities to make changes in the organization and bring new ideas and new horizons, that's what I called it, reaching new horizons in the organization, and some of those changes exist today.
Eduardo Pena's lifelong mission to improve the opportunities for Hispanic Americans has taken him from his small hometown in Texas all the way to Capitol Hill, where he impacted the early stages of bilingual education, created bills for equal opportunity, the war on poverty, and was one of the architects of affirmative action.
My message to the Hispanic youth is to prioritize your commitment to education and to the Hispanic community. In the long run, it's about how you use your life and the positive effect it had on others.
On behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff of the United States Leadership Institute and the 27th Annual United States Hispanic Leadership Conference, we salute you.